welcome to our first of hopefully many SSCPL roundtables for the various letters in the SSCPL acronym. We started doing this because about a year ago, a bunch of public librarians were, talking about how difficult things had been and needing to discuss issues that came up being a Jewish public librarian or a librarian serving a Jewish community. And we realized that this seems like something that would be useful for everybody to do. And I believe they've happened in the past as well. So we'd like to get some regular conversations going about the different things that, whatever questions or even just fun stories and things that people have to share. I am actually a public librarian. I have never worked in a synagogue, but I'm assuming everybody here has some good stories to tell or some questions to ask or things that you want to talk about. And I also expect most of you know each other, but why don't we introduce ourselves and see where we work anyways, just to get everybody on even footing. Does anybody want to go first, or should I just call names out in the order that I see them?
All names.
Okay. All right. Well, the first name below me in the participants list that I'm looking at is Emily Bergman. So Emily, would you like to start?
So I'm Emily, and I was an academic librarian for almost 50 years, but I volunteered to run my Temple Library in Glendale, California for 30 years. And I have lived in Houston now for 6 weeks. So I have not started volunteering to work in a Temple Library, but I will try to do that after the new year. But I did spend 30 years at a little tiny Temple Library.
Okay. Ellie, would you like to go next?
Yes, my name's Ellie Schwartz, and I worked as a librarian in a public elementary school for a number of years. I retired. Retirement is great. And I've been a volunteer librarian at my synagogue for the past many years. But this year I got basic accreditation from AJL, and that has made a world of difference to me. And that's all I have to say right now.
That's really awesome that you got the accreditation. I might have missed this. Where are you located?
Nashua, New Hampshire.
Oh, wow. Okay. I spent about 2 hours in New Hampshire once, and I was very happy that I was able to take it off of my list of states to go to.
Ah.
All right. Becca, why don't you go next?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Levitan. I am a public librarian, but I'm also AJL membership vice president and a big SSCPL supporter. So I'm here to just join in and see how it goes.
Thank you. Eileen?
I'm Eileen Grossberg. I'm in Montclair, New Jersey, and I'm both a volunteer and a paid librarian. I've been a volunteer at my synagogue for many, 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 many years. In fact, we just had a celebration to acknowledge that we also got accreditation. It was just something that I kept putting off and finally did it. And it's really nice, and there was a little bump, but unfortunately it just hasn't seemed to do what I had hoped it to do, but keep trying. And then I work at another synagogue. I have 6 hours a week, which really is more like, 12, 15, because you can't do it in 6 hours a week. And probably like everybody, I have budget problems. And this year they made me hourly as opposed to salaried, which makes a really big difference because now I have to make up any holiday that is scheduled, and before I didn't. And I don't know where it's going to go, but and I also found out today that they want me to buy books for a all synagogue read out of my minuscule budget, so I'm going to try to fight that one. But I love what I do, which is why I've been doing it for so many years. And I was a public librarian as well as a school librarian.
Right. There are definitely some things to talk about there, it sounds like. All right, Michelle, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. How do I give you my picture? I don't know how to do that. But
We
I'm up
see you.
here. I'm
We
up
see you.
here on my screen on the left. I'm Michelle Sandler. I work in Temple Beth David in Westminster, California, which is Orange County. I've been there 12 years as a volunteer. I worked at a school as a volunteer librarian for about 7 years. I worked at another synagogue in Newport Beach for about 7 years, paid like 4 hours a week. And I worked at a day school as a volunteer out in Aliso Viejo, a Jewish day school, as their librarian. And I worked at a JCC for a while as building a library. And I don't have much of a budget. It pays for ResourceMate and the OPAC by ResourceMate. And anything else I want, I pay for out of my own pocket. And we're a small Reformed synagogue with about 250 or 260 members, families.
Yeah, it sounds like money is going to be a big issue for everybody, huh? Okay, well, I don't think I did introduce myself properly. I'm Aviva Rosenberg. I'm currently the president of SSCPL. I'm a public librarian at the Ridgefield Public Library in Bergen County, New Jersey. And I also do Sunday shifts at a couple of other libraries in our area. The library that I work in has no Jewish community to speak of, but the ones that I do Sundays at have very large Jewish communities. But I've never done the synagogue library thing. I have worked in a school. Synagogues and centers aren't on my list yet. My synagogue just has like a bookshelf for kids that I would love to replenish, but yeah, that would definitely be a project to try, and it would involve some specific fundraiser event of some kind. Have any of you ever done that kind of thing, like some fundraiser specifically for the library that was at least somewhat effective?
When I worked at Bat Yam in Newport Beach, the rabbi had a really interesting thing that was very effective. He charged every family in the temple like $25. And he said, you pick out 613 books and you buy for every family that sends in their $25, you buy a book. So I bought like 400 or 500 children's books for Jewish children's books because we didn't have much of a kids collection. And I was able to get a lot of books that way. And some people would send in like $100. And you can't buy books for money you didn't get. But for everyone that sent in money, they got a book plate in their book. I didn't type them because I'm not a really good typist, but everybody got a book, and it got put in the collection. And I thought that was really great. But at the time, they were a very wealthy congregation. Not so much anymore.
So we did it as not for money, but for books. And we sent it out, and we had volunteers standing in the parking lot when they dropped their kids off for Sunday school to pick up the books. But some people didn't buy books, they just gave us money. And that was great.
I fundraised a few years ago for a set of Talmud, and that's a lot of money. And we raised enough money to buy the entire set with a little bit over, just by constantly approaching some individuals who really felt that they wanted to do this and bought multi-volumes. But I kept just publicizing it, and what a wonderful thing it would be, because we did not have a set of Talmud. And took a while, but I think it was either $25 or $40, I can't remember. And it was great. My current place, ironically, where I work for pay, will not let me fundraise. And I wanted to upgrade the children's collection, which is really not very good. And I had a talk with the rabbi, and she said, you know, we asked them so much, we don't want a nickel and dime. So, you know, I can't do my fundraising at all. And I know there are people out there who are very happy to make a donation of $18, $25 for the library. They just don't know that they can do that.
We
That's my
did birthday books, and
I'm
that
sorry,
might be a way around it, birthday books.
no, I think that's fundraising.
Right. So, but it is fundraising, but it might be a way around it so that people could donate a children's book in honor of their child's birthday.
I've kind of talked about that through the preschool, and it didn't fly. And I've done that in my
Okay.
school, when I was a school
Okay.
librarian. I know it works.
Right.
How
Would they
about
let
writing
you,
it
would they
in
let
your
you stage an
column?
event? Would they let you stage an event of some kind, like an author visit that or something along those lines that might
I don't,
wonder.
well, I've proposed author visits. In fact, I had somebody who would have been very happy to come. And they're just don't seem to be interested in any library events. I can't figure it out. And I've been there long enough that I should be able to figure it out. They're, you know, it's an old congregation, I like 150 years old, that lost a lot of members and now is trying to be rebuilt with a younger rabbi, a different point of view. And I think one of the thing is they want to concentrate on like big things, and they don't consider the library big.
Where's this one located? It's not in Montclair.
South Orange. Oh, Shalom, you probably have heard of it because you're from New Jersey.
You said South Orange?
Newark, it's an old Newark synagogue that moved to the suburb. Conservative.
You would think the library would be something that like they would play up as
Yeah.
like a draw.
The teachers love the library. They are so happy to bring the kids. I can't get the administration to beef it up, or it's very frustrating. But the nickel and dime is really,
Yeah.
And that was a term that was used, but
Right. Yeah.
just keep trying.
Is there any way to get at it through the school then? Would they help or request it?
don't-
What if
I
they
don't-
requested it?
No, I don't think so, because the school was also losing kids, and there's a benefactor who right now is actually basically paying tuition. School is free
Mhm.
right now in
Wow.
order to build up. So I don't think they want to ask for money or
Right.
anything.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know.
Well, I'm happy because you're so conveniently located to me. I'm happy to give you my Sydney Taylor, piles again this year. I'll have to get in touch with you about that.
I was
About
very
how
happy to have
things
them.
for you. But that's not like a permanent solution to this
My
kind
budget
of
was cut again.
problem. Yeah. It's not a permanent solution, as helpful as that kind of
No,
thing
it
can
isn't a
be.
permanent solution, but
Yeah. Oh, that's such a
thank
tight
goodness I have a
situation.
very good public library,
Right.
at least for, doing library classes.
Right. Anybody else have any specific budget issues going on?
Well, what's
Get an
happened
email
with,
about the budget in California that, so I'm gone. The person who took my place is not a librarian. She's a social worker. She doesn't know anything, and she was a little slow on the uptake. And I got permission to hire Lisa Silverman as a consultant to come in once a month to help this new volunteer. And I got this email, you don't have any money to pay her. just put the money somewhere. I feel like I volunteered and Lisa's doing this for half of what she should be paid. Just find the money. But yeah, it's a problem with salaries. It's a problem with supplies. It's a problem with collections. It's just a problem. And I would bet, I mean, I don't know for all you other librarians in a congregation, I have had people say we don't need a library because everything's online.
Oh,
But that doesn't help the children because the children are my biggest customers and they need it in print. And I could get rid of the adult collection probably, and it probably wouldn't make any difference, or not a whole lot of difference. Although the Sunday school does use the adult collection. But the children need books.
Do people borrow books from your library? Like there's open hours, or is it only like what's the schedule like for this for people to use your libraries?
So the Glendale Library is only open Sunday mornings because that's when people are there, when they bring their kids for Sunday school. I could be open probably on a Friday night, but there's not people don't want to come in the library. They want to socialize after services. And so,
I was wondering, like with services, is that a good time for library use or not? I mean, what do kids do then? Or do they have kid services? Do people bring their children into the main thing? Like what do people do with kids at that time?
So for this congregation, they have a children's service once a month, and they have a preschool service once a month on Saturday mornings. And maybe if I went to those services and I were open, maybe the kids would come in. But the adults, they're not going to come in. They want to sit around and drink coffee and eat cookies and chit chat with their friends. And I get that.
Both my libraries are technically open whenever they're technically available for people to use when the building is open. Because one, I'm a volunteer, and the other, as technically 6 hours a week. So it's the honor system, a card, and then later I put it into the computer, the information to the computer. It's a little bit of use, but I think it's more, I really think much of the use is people take out books and they don't sign them out. They forget or whatever. I actually had somebody come in this morning looking for a book for her child, and I think she walked out with the book without signing it out. And I think it was an accident, but she had been looking at things and she had something in her hand. But it's really hard to call people on something like that. Like, you thief. Book.
That's funny.
Hopefully it'll come back because I don't even know what book she had. I just know there's an empty space where there was a book this morning. It was a play book. But if somebody reads it, it's better than nobody ever read. But I think a lot of libraries, like particularly when they're volunteer led, it's the same kind of situation. They're open whenever the building's open. Otherwise, nobody would ever get into them because there's nobody there.
Arlene, you have something?
No, I'm sorry. I got in late. I was busy doing something at home and I couldn't stop in the middle of it. I'm sorry. I didn't know what you talked about the first 20 minutes. It seems that I can listen to what's being said now about the hours and about usage. And I also, I'm only there a couple of days a week. So we do use the honor system. You check, you sign a card on the book, you put it in I have a little plastic box. They put it in there. And it seems to work so far. Been working for many, many years. I haven't had, my budget is a pretty good budget for a synagogue. I get a lot of compliments about it. In fact, what they really love is now I bring the last several years, we belong to the Jewish Book Council, so we bring in speakers. And of course, that sometimes encourages people to look for literature on the topic, whatever. And I'm finding now that the adult circulation has picked up quite a bit. Because one person will say, oh, I didn't know you. Oh, I love this. And they'll come back and they'll tell their friend, and their friend comes in. So I definitely see a pickup in adult circulation. I don't know what that's due to, but I try and be very careful, very selective about what I buy, and making sure that it's appropriate for a synagogue library, number one. And it seems to be working, and what I find is the big challenge is to get people in the library who, when they come in, they say, wow, I never knew this was here, blah, blah, all that. I think everybody experiences the same thing. And most people, they come for services or they come for a meeting and they go home, they don't bother with the library. So I find that a big challenge is to somehow get people to come in and look at it, albeit I'm not there on Shabbat. If I was there on Shabbat, I probably could make a better pitch and invite people in, whatever. But I don't know if anybody else works on Shabbat. I don't, if I lived closer, I probably could be there for a few hours, but I'm about a half-hour drive away. But I would really, I think you're being there when people have services and events. It's really important. I mean, I just wish the library could be seen by more people. I always find that very frustrating, because when people see it, they love it. But like you say, I'm only there a couple of days a week, and these people are working during the day when I'm there. So, but
Arlene,
yeah.
how big is your congregation?
I think it's just under 500 families.
Oh, so it's quite large.
Yeah, it's a
Why
large
you have
synagogue.
which is why-
I feel very, very blessed and very lucky because they do great. I've been there over 17 years, and they do really appreciate and they love the collection. And in fact, one donor approved like a $20,000 improvement in shelving and everything now. And he said, no, it's beautiful. How much do you need? And it was, as I said, I'm very, very lucky. I really find them lucky, but I really work hard to make it, accessible and getting good materials and being very responsive. If somebody says, do you have, no, I'll get it. Don't worry. And 3 days later, I have the book, and they're very appreciative. So I think I try to be very responsive because I want them to use the library. And I think that's the challenge of all the synagogue libraries, basically. Usage, exposure, because that will enhance the ability to get a good budget. If it's being used and it's being appreciated and people come forward and say, yes, let's spend money here because it's a great resource for us, whatever. And a religious school, kids come in and, I read books to them and then they take out books. So, try to spread the web.
Do you ever
Anyway.
have to fight for your budget there, or have convinced
No,
people?
never. It was
Oh,
very
wow.
funny because last year they had a new module for the early childhood center, and it was learning and literacy. So I had all these 4 and 5-year-olds coming in, and I had to get there earlier. So that meant my portion of my budget for my salary went up just by virtue of the more hours. And I asked the executive director, I said, this year, I'm there 2 hours earlier, this day. And he says, don't worry about it, Arlene, don't worry about it.
I wonder if
So I
that-
didn't have to fight so much,
this is a 200 family congregation instead of a 500 family congregation, and I wonder if that makes a difference.
But I volunteer in my own synagogue, which is about 150.
Yeah.
And I've been fighting to get paid there because I noticed that other people are getting paid for doing things in the synagogue. And I took great offense to that. Like the lady who is a new member who leads the choir gets paid. I said, wait a minute, she gets paid and I don't get paid. So I'm in kind of a thing with them about that. So I was very offended. I really was very offended. And I told them, I said, I've been there 17 years doing this, as a volunteer, and you pay a lady who leads the choir who just joined the synagogue, really? you know, like Ronnie Dangerfield says, you get no respect. Anyway, that's ongoing, but I may have to keep it as a volunteer because I agreed in the beginning to be a volunteer. Anyway,
I take it as my gift to the temple. I
Yeah.
don't make donations, I pay my dues. I don't make donations. My donation is that
oh, I make donations too.
I have been running the library for 30 years.
Yeah.
They
yeah.
couldn't afford to pay me. So that's my gift.
Well, my synagogue can't afford to pay me, which is why I get bothered. You know, because I'm on the board of trustees, so I know what the budget is and I know how much money they have. So I know what, yeah.
Can I ask a question? But you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. What do you get paid per hour?
Well, what I was asking them for was very reasonable. And I didn't, you know, they asked me how many hours would you work a week? So I said approximately, but then there were weeks I wouldn't be that many hours. So instead of telling me, well, you know what, you want 50, I only asked for $15 an hour. I wasn't going to ask them for a big, it was just something.
I'd rather
very
do it
mo-
as a volunteer than that.
Yeah, but you know what? I felt that if you do get paid, it has a little bit more value to them. It's like giving something away for free or charging $5. When you charge something, it has more value than when you give it away for free. So I felt that I'm not going to make a lot of money. I said, you know, but what they should have come back to me is that, Arlene, fine, $15, but we're capping it at $2,000 for the year. That's all you have to say. And you figure it out. Anything beyond 2,000, you know, you do on your own, which is the way it should be. But they never came back to me with that, which really bothered me. So $2,000 in the budget that we have is really nothing. 2,000 for the year, 12 months we're talking about. I just felt that because other people were getting money that were really not professionals. And I said, I'm a professional. I have a master's in library science. And I do, and you compliment me all the time. You love the library and blah, 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 blah. And then, yeah, but you like the lady who leads the choir more. And that's really bothered me. So anyway, my synagogue at least has to figure out which volunteers get paid and which volunteers don't get paid. And I think it's a policy. Yeah, it really is a policy. I think a lot of synagogues deal with that too, who have volunteers. Because, you know, why should the volunteer librarian not get paid? But the person, you know, who writes a couple of articles in a review, they get paid. Why? What's the difference? You know. Anyway, but that's an internal synagogue thing, and they know it, and they're going to be talking about it. So we'll see.
Does anybody know what the going rate is for synagogue?
I would imagine the minimum going rate has got to be between $30 and $40 an hour at least, if not more. At
Yeah.
least.
I had a feeling that I am grossly.
I think when you get up into the $50 range, that's a little tricky because that would be probably more a consultant. 50 to 75 an hour would be more. If somebody wants to redo a library or you know, automate it, you can charge as a consultant. And that, you know, but
Yeah, we
I
got
was asking
an
very
email
low.
to AJL a couple of weeks ago from a congregation up in northern Vermont that was planning to start a library, and they were curious about, you know, consulting or getting somebody to help them start off the ground. So I was like, get in touch with AJL New England. And I gave them, you know, Susan Crusel's name because I know she does consulting, but I never heard back from them. And I'm really curious if they've actually done anything about it yet. Because they sounded pretty gung-ho. They're like kind of what's the word? Like is non-denominational the word? They're not affiliated with a particular movement, I think.
They're a
They're
chavurah,
kind of
right?
right. Yeah, they're a
Oh,
chavurah.
it's a Havara. Okay.
Right. But they sound, I mean, the way they wrote sounded like they were very enthusiastic and would have had a lot of support from their congregation. I'm so curious. Like,
Yeah.
I hope they do something about it. I should really follow up.
I consulted to a local shul here. I didn't charge them anything. I just sat with the
Right.
librarian volunteer and I told her join AJL and do this and do that and do this. And we helped her figure out cataloging, you know, so, but I didn't charge them anything. It's a neighboring synagogue. So I didn't, you know,
Right.
yeah. Which they
Yeah, I
greatly
wasn't sure if they
appreciate.
had a budget or not for that. So I think they might have still have to figure that kind of thing out.
Yeah.
But it was also like in like, I think Burlington, it's like a, you know, Middlebury college town. Hopefully I would just expect people up there have money. So hopefully it means that people will cough up for it.
It depends what a priority it is.
Right.
I mean, if it's a priority and they have a beginnings of a collection, and they want to organize it, you know, it makes sense to invest, you know, $1,000 in a consultant, you know, for a period of time, for a month, get everything organized, know what to do. And then the volunteers could, you know, theoretically take over.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, like people are talking about like places where you've got young families, or they're trying to attract young families. Like in the public library where I work, young families are one of the biggest, you know, users. You know, I started doing more morning story times that have been getting
Yeah.
massive attendance, at least by our
Yeah.
standards, because it's a smallish town. Because parents need somewhere to go and somewhere to hang out. They just like they're desperate for something to do with their little kids if they're the type to be at home.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know if there's ways to leverage that, or in a synagogue you have to find the right time that people are available and will come around for it, or that they're already coming around, right?
Yeah, the young families in my synagogue, and I know the people who do Tat Shabbat, they use the library a lot. And I can tell by the mess they leave, so I know they're using the library. So, and I always say, don't file any books on the shelf, just leave them on the table. And I have a whole big display thing, you know, like outside the library, and it's just I put all the books out there, you know, holidays or special subjects, and I know they're all messed up when I come back, so I know they're using them, and I know the kids take it, they sit on the floor, they read a book during services, so you know,
That's
yeah,
good.
they do love that. The young families, I know that. You're right about the young families.
I
Yeah.
have a completely different question. Does anybody use wine?
They use what?
Wine.
Oh,
The
I use wine. Yeah,
classification,
sure. I use wine.
No, Elazar.
Yeah, I use Eleazar. So a
Wine.
librarian contacted me she's an academic librarian. I think she's at BYU, and she's doing research on unusual classification systems, and, you know, other than Dewey and LC. And so I filled out the questionnaire, and we had an interview. We did an hour interview on Monday, and one of the questions was, are there others like I don't know any line. So if you would be willing to talk to a librarian who's doing research on I assume non-Dewey, non-LC classification systems, I would give her your name.
But she's aware of wine, right?
Well, I told her that there's this other system. I just don't know
Yeah.
anything about it.
Oh, yeah, I use wine on my both libraries. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd be willing to talk to her. I don't care. I talked to people about wine before. It's Dewey, the Jewish Dewey.
Well, so is Eleazar.
Not familiar with Elazar. Is it really? It's also Dewey like? Because I'm not
Yes,
familiar with
it's a
Elazar.
decimal system.
Yeah.
But does it use the same classes as Dewey?
No, it's completely, it's completely different. So they've
Okay.
taken a decimal system and then divided it in ways that will fit a Jewish library, because Dewey and LC just don't work. There's only one number, and the problem, I
Right.
mean, we had this long conversation. As an academic library, I've mostly used LC, and the problem with LC is some is in the B's and some is in the D's, and so they're not co-located, which is what classification
Yeah.
systems are supposed to do.
Yeah.
I'm a catwalker. I told her that I thought wine was closer to Dewey, and it could be used in especially schools that have to have both secular books and Jewish books, but I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, the wine does have some limitations with secular books, especially in the history, the 900s. They expanded a lot for Holocaust area and Nazism and all that, but there were some limitations, with wine in terms of secular. But I find it, I find it okay to use. It's pretty simple, and it resembles Dewey. you know, in a lot of ways, in which people are familiar with public libraries for the
Unless you
most
have
part.
a huge library, I think it's, for most synagogue libraries, it's adequate because you don't have that many books that you need to get down to,
Yeah,
minutia in the decimal.
right. You go for the larger class because
Yeah, and
you
people
have to
recognize
think of, yeah,
it. It's a comfort level too.
yeah.
Once I tell,
Are there any databases, library automation packages that actually do Elazar or Wine, as opposed to just Dewey and LC?
I wish that mine did, but
I use Library World and I put in my own cataloging.
I use
But in the
Library
but in
World and
Library World, they also give the Dewey. So you can kind of figure out if you really, I have no idea where this would be. So then I consult Dewey and I see, well, where did they put it? And I also use WorldCat a lot of times. I check records with WorldCat to see how they define the item and the classes and all that. So that helps too. Yeah, but I do my own cataloging. Yeah.
so I take that, the Dewey, where the Dewey number would be, the 082, and I put in the Elazar number so that
Yeah.
it works
Yeah.
out right in the catalog.
Yeah.
And it's one of the, Michelle, it's one of the things that I said to this woman, that I can upload records into Library World.
Mhm.
I have to get rid of the LC number because it just gets put in there and it gets confusing to users, and I have to change the Dewey number to
Oh.
my classification number so that it shows when you look at a record.
Well,
you have to
in
do that in
ResourceMate, you have the top place in the second screen where that's where your number goes. And if you don't like the number there,
Just
because
delete
it's
it.
set up to Dewey or LC, just add your own number and delete
Yeah,
that. The other stuff's
that's
still
what I
there
do.
below it, but it doesn't show in your
Yeah.
record.
Yeah. Yeah, you can manipulate Library World a lot. You can delete fields, if they're not useful.
Right.
Yeah.
I use Opals and I've been very happy with it.
But I'm sorry, what?
Opals,
Opals.
Oh, Opals. I didn't,
very,
yeah.
very happy with it. They are so responsive.
Mhm.
And it's I think relatively inexpensive for what you get.
Do you pay yearly for Opals, right?
Pay yearly, yes, but I
What
had
does it cost per year?
it's $300 and
Oh, that's cheap.
we've
Yeah.
been paying that since the library went online, and this is my paid job, and they went online before I started working there, and I've been there over 10 years, so it hasn't gone up.
It has. So I talked to, when I needed to get off my PC-based system,
Yeah,
I talked to them and it was $500, which is what Library World is. And I had the old PC system for
Okay.
Library World, and so
Okay.
I just migrated to the online.
Yeah.
So maybe because you are a legacy person.
perhaps,
Yeah.
or our size.
I'm sorry?
It could be the size also.
I told them we have 4,000 books.
Then
And
it's the legacy.
yeah. So it was 500 for Opals and it was 500 for Library World. And because we already had Library World and I thought it was easier to migrate,
Yeah.
that's what I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was surprised that it has never gone up, but I'm not going to ask them to raise it.
If
That's
they had
interesting.
offered Opals to me for less, I would have gone with Opals, but they didn't. And so
Yeah.
their loss. I
Does
told them.
Opals do LSR? Because a while back, this was years ago, they said they were going to set up. I read somewhere that they were going to start doing LSR.
No, I don't use Elazar, so, but as far as I know, they don't.
Okay, because I use ResourceMate just because it was between Library World and ResourceMate. And I used Library World for about 6 months and didn't like them and migrated to ResourceMate and they work.
Did you have to do a lot of reorganizing to go to ResourceMate, or could it transfer
No, I
over?
hadn't done that much. So
Okay.
we had a committee, me and a friend of mine, and I did the cataloging and he did all the labeling and the moving around and the bending and the lifting and.
How different is it? What's different about ResourceMate? I'm not familiar with, I mean, I've heard of it, I just don't know it.
It's when you first get it, I think I got Essential Plus. it was like $700. And then you, 3 months later, you pay another 100 for perpetual care. And then every year it's like 100 and something for perpetual care. And then the OPAC, if you want the OPAC, is like close to $200 or $250 or something for perpetual care. So you're spending like $300, $400 a year to maintain the system.
But how is it different from Library World?
I found it different in the fact that instead of having, the same book show up 20 times, it shows up once when you put in the
Oh, I
ISBN
know what you're
number.
talking about. Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out how to change that in Library World. And ResourceMate, I didn't have to figure anything out. I just started doing it. I had been using Surpass at my career college library, and I loved it. It was very easy to use. Well, this is like Surpass in a way. I just figured it out instantly. It was
But there
like,
were so many different editions and things for one title. You could have 20 records for one title, but one is a vocal, one is a this, one is an audio, one is a that.
I
So
look
you
for the
have to
one
go
that I
through it.
want,
Yeah.
but in Library World, they would have like 20 of the exact same things.
No,
Would be the
I
same,
yeah, I know what you're saying.
and I
Yeah.
couldn't figure out how to change that. After I got rid of it, they said, oh, you can change that. But they were $400 a year every year. This
Yeah.
came down to like, I think I spend $300 to $400 for both the OPAC and the library automation package.
Mhm.
The prices go up a little bit every year,
Yeah.
so it might be closer to 400. But, I get everything I need
Yeah.
and it works.
Okay. I've never explored Resource Make because the person before me used Library World, so I just continued. But it works fine. I find everything, and I have it on my phone. I have the database on my telephone. Do you have that with ResourceMate?
No, it's on my laptop at home. The catalog is on my laptop, and then everybody else,
Do you have
do
a
it from the
mobile? Does
OPAC.
it have does it have a mobile app?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I love about library. You got a mobile app. I can tell anybody
If
anything.
it does, I could do that, but I don't do things on my phone. I do
Oh,
things
okay.
other than reading email or Facebook. I generally don't use my phone I get on my laptop, which is here at the house. So when I have books to catalog, I just bring them home.
Right. So,
Do
but the
them and then
point
take
is
them
that
back.
your users might want the app so that they could look things up to see if
Well,
they
they look things up via the Temple's website. Our catalog is on the Temple's website,
Okay.
Yeah, mine is too.
Yes, as well.
at templebethdavid.org, and under learning and then library, and then you go down into the middle of the library page and it says click here to view the OPAC. So it's very easy for people to find. And I write a column every time a Megillah comes out, which is our newsletter, and I tell them how to find it.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot anymore because I cut my collection in half because they needed the library for a preschool class. Well, for a youth lounge, because the youth lounge was being turned into a preschool classroom to make money. So I got rid of half my collection.
All about the money.
Yep.
We're back to money.
Yep.
It always comes back to money.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well,
when you're paying for most of it out of your own pocket, and about 4 years ago, I said, hey, or maybe, yeah, it was about 3-4 years ago, I said, hey, I think it's time I get a budget to pay for the OPAC and the catalog, because
You
I'm
were
paying
paying-
for it, my husband and I had a sympathetic Temple president, and she said, all right. And so they gave me enough money to cover it. Then 1 year they gave me more, and I was waiting till the end of the year because I wasn't sure what I wanted. And I spent a little bit, and then they took it away. And then the next year they said, you have $200. And I said, that's not enough to cover what I have to cover. I said, you're going to pay $400.
oh, jeez.
And did they give it to you?
Yeah. I mean, I just send it to the office manager, who's like our temple administrator, and she pays it. If it's under $500, she just pays it. There's 2 bills and the total is around $400 and it gets paid. I want Cindy Taylor Award winners. I buy those out of my own pocket just because I want to build up the kids' collection.
So you don't have a budget for books at all?
Nope,
All right, good.
they can't afford it. We raised $1.5 million to remodel the sanctuary, and they still have to raise some more because there's still things that haven't been done yet because we can't afford them.
How large is your synagogue?
About maybe 250 families.
Oh, okay, okay. All right.
I don't have a book, but at Glendale, it doesn't have a book budget either. In fact, there's no budget. Whatever I have, it's because people have made a donation.
Do you have to solicit those donations, or do people like certain people are just into the library and they come along and offer?
Yeah.
So I have solicited in the past, but recently, you know, it's just what people donate. And because I left, I thought, and I made a big deal about having been there for 30 years. I thought maybe people would, you know, like, and one person, past president, made a donation in my honor.
I asked the rabbi if I could have a plaque in the kids section, because most of the books in the kids section were purchased out of mine and my husband's budget, our own money. Just because I get all kinds of anxiety issues and major, you know, mental health issues, and I get so upset and so sick that I go out and buy a couple $1,000s worth of books, and I've done that many times. She said, no. You know, I said, all you have to do is buy a little plaque and put it, because we have about 1,100 kids and young adults and teen books, and she wouldn't do it. You know, I just thought, you know, people would know that, hey, these books all came out of my pocket, and they wouldn't know why. They would just know that this was like my section. You know, we don't have a budget. The little budget we have is a Wendy Sheckman Library Fund and an endowment fund. And I don't get hardly anything out of it, if at all. And this year I'm asking for money to start an archive. We've never had an archive, so I'm going to ask them for like $500 out of that fund, because the rabbi said she wants an archive and it would have to come out of that fund because there's no place else to take it from, and hope that they have it, because nobody donates to that fund, and they don't give out the principal, they only give out the interest.
Interesting.
It's, you know, we have the endowment funds, and they're only, you get all these funds and you only get the interest out of them. The principal that was used to start the fund is never touched. And I don't even know how much is in there. They won't tell me.
At my paid job, we have a library fund, which pays part of my salary. Any money that comes into the fund, which is very little because I can't publicize it because that's fundraising. So whatever comes into it does not come to me to buy books. It offsets the salary, which a couple of people do know that and are appalled, because it means, like, if somebody donates expecting to find a book on the shelf with their name in it, for instance, it doesn't get there because I
Yeah.
never get that money. But I think that's a battle for another time when they feel
Yep.
more secure.
We all struggle with funding.
Yes, we do.
We do the best we can. The only thing I think we can do is try to find benefactors. I had one briefly,
Yeah.
but I cut him off because, you know, we didn't need, and his wife didn't know about it, and I didn't want, nobody knew about it except for like 4 people, including the rabbi and the director of Sunday
Curiosity.
school. So I finally just said, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep this secret. So I cut him
Out of
off.
curiosity for you lovely synagogue librarians, if the AJL development associate, Jerry Krautman, who has done a really good job of getting AJL money, were to run like a class for development for synagogue librarians, would that be something you would want to see?
I think that would be great.
Be very interesting.
I'm gonna we will shoot off an email to Jerry
I
and see
mean,
what we
I'm
can
on
do
the
about that.
committee to, you know, to create classes for synagogue, people that are working in synagogue libraries that are not degreed librarians. I've been on that since it started with Chaim Gottschalk. You know,
Well,
I
then
haven't
this is
taken
one we
any of
need
the
to talk about.
classes. I have them all taped, or 90% of them, and I haven't watched any of them yet.
The course that was given, I think it started in May. We have a congregant who is now working at Rutgers as a fundraiser, but she went to library. She decided to go to library school also. So she's in library school at Rutgers. And I suggested that she take the course because she really likes the library. And anything that she wants, for some reason, we always have, no matter what it is.
Mhm.
And she said the courses have been wonderful. I don't know if that's the same one you're talking about or not.
Yeah, it was AJL, and Synagogue Library
And it's very good.
Education Committee, and I was on the committee. The classes started like May or April.
Yeah.
And I never took any of them, but I helped create them.
Yeah. Well, I remember seeing the information on it. They sounded good. If I was starting as a Judaica library, I definitely would have taken that. Sounded like a really good foundation.
Rebecca, just before AJL in San Diego, I had dinner with the executive director of the Jewish Braille Institute because she wants to work with us. And we also talked about projects that we might want to fundraise for, and I put her in touch with Jerry. And I wonder if there are folks even outside of SSCPL, sort of special libraries for whom this kind of thing would be really useful. And I bring this up because some of it might be, we may not be able to fundraise much within our own institution. They're constantly asking for money from congregants, and it's hard to ask for more money from congregants, and they already feel like they pay enough dues, and right? But maybe ways of working with other organizations that might be able to help bring in funding. I don't know what that might be. I mean, Glendale is an LA suburb. I don't know if
I know,
wherever you are in New Hampshire, if there's, someplace that you might cooperate with to raise funds.
I
But
know
I'm
in
I'm thinking that
the 90s. Go ahead.
the idea of cooperating is really good because it may not help us build a collection or get funding immediately, but the goodwill could help us grow a few years from now. I just talked to somebody about perhaps having a Native American / Jewish program, maybe like in Jewish Book Month, which is Native American Month, November next year. There's a book by Rebecca Claren about the intersection of Native American experience and the Jewish pioneer experience. And, something like that, if you're cooperating with a public institute, like your public library or a university or something, could engender a lot of very goodwill and publicity.
Or, if you're trying to start your archive and there is a local historical society, because I was contacted by the Glendale Historical Society before I left, but I then moved away. So
Yeah, there's the Orange County Jewish Historical Society, which is one person, and I know her. And so I will.
but I'm tight, maybe there's an Orange County or there's
Yeah, there is. I'm on their mailing list. So I hear about their programs.
Because it's hard to do an archive all by yourself.
Yep. Bill, I've got a committee. There's 4 of us. We're gonna do it. And we're gonna try to do it. I mean, I haven't taken any archives classes, but I've got interns coming from San Jose State University School of Archives.
Oh, you
They're,
have a really good resource there then.
the school's providing, since I'm a graduate from there, they're providing me with a free intern.
Good. I've done that a lot. I've had a lot of library school interns, but I promise you they take more work than they give you back.
And I've also contacted the American Jewish Archives, and we're trying to set up a time where we can meet on Zoom and talk about it. So I'm contacting all the right people. And I'm gonna get what I need help-wise to be able to do a good job.
Just takes time.
Yeah.
So
But what I
I've,
wanted to say was, in the 90s, I think it was, when I worked at Temple Bat Yam in Newport Beach, I was a member of AJLSC, and somebody in SC got a grant, and we were able to go and buy like $1,000 worth of books at Eric Chaim Klein book publishers. At the time, he was like in Inglewood or something. I don't know where he is now. And I went out there a couple times, and my husband and I picked out books for their library, and we got like $1,000 worth of free books. I don't know who the grant was. Emily might remember.
I didn't
Was
know
it-
anything about it. Lisa Silverman might.
It was like in the mid-90s.
Yeah. I didn't know anything about it. So it'll be interesting for me to go from a congregation of a couple of hundred families. So Beth Israel in Houston has 2,300 families, the largest congregational library west of the Mississippi or something. So it'll be a very interesting experience to
Exciting.
walk into something like that. And then I will come to this and I won't complain about anything because
Yeah. You might even have a budget and a salary.
I mean it's a huge congregation with a huge library.
Are you moving?
Oh, I moved. Oh yeah, you missed that. I
I
moved
meant, yeah.
beginning of November to be grandma.
To where?
Houston.
Houston. Oh, okay. Oh, wow, that's exciting. And you're going to be the librarian there?
No. They have a paid person. I
Oh, okay.
volunteer. I said I've been a librarian for an academic librarian for 50 years, and I volunteered to run my little temple library for 30 years, and I'd like to volunteer. And they said, whatever you want to do is fine.
Oh,
And there
wow.
aren't many catalogers in the world, and so I would be happy to just sit and catalog a few hours a week.
Is their current librarian involved in AJL at all? You should hook her if you're not.
She is. So it
Okay,
used to
good.
be Judy Weedman.
Oh, yeah, I know, yeah.
So she retired and someone else took over whose name I don't remember. And I'm sure she is. And I
Okay,
joined
good.
the book group, and the person sitting next to me in the book group was the librarian before Judy was. So
Oh,
yeah.
oh.
I don't know how many staff they have, but I'm sure that the head librarian or whatever is paid. And
Is
I'm
that
sure,
is that a reform temple or what kind of
Yes.
temple?
yes.
The reform,
I-
I'm gonna say the reform are the big ones. Yeah,
Actually, the conservative here is even bigger.
really? Oh,
Yeah, it's
right.
the biggest conservative, I think. I think it's
Wow.
2,600 families. That's where
Wow.
my grandkids go to preschool. I am third generation reform.
Okay. Yeah, because my daughter works in a large reform synagogue in Illinois, which has over 2,200 families or something. So they have everything, anything you want, including a beautiful view. So I kind of generalized. I didn't think the conservative movement had such large synagogues.
So it sounds like our issues are money, which is always what we talk about, isn't it?
Yep.
Right.
And
I guess
lack
the
of
question is
respect.
how can AJL help? I don't know, with training or advocacy or resources. Is there anything you can think of that would be useful for us to do as an organization?
So one of the things that I had asked Jerry about was, could we raise money for a project like a book club in a box? So my public library in Glendale had a thing where you get 10 books and a notebook of information about the people all in a bag, and you check it out and then, right. And if AJL could raise money for something like that, and then different libraries could borrow those boxes from somewhere, I don't know where. Because my temple has book discussions, but they don't use my library because I can't provide, 10 or 15 books or whatever it is. And so I'm just completely out of the loop. But it seemed to me that that might be something that we could raise money for, that might help our little congregational libraries provide more services to our users.
That is a really interesting idea.
That's a good idea,
But
yeah.
I mean, people would have to, I guess, pay for shipping one way or another. But if you're how many books would you need in a set like that? How much would likely be enough?
I have no idea. I don't know how many people are in. Well, a book, I mean, okay, so the person to ask is Rachel. Like Rachel has all of these book clubs, right, in her congregation. And how many people does she have? Because the problem is, if you've got 50 people, it's not really a discussion. A book group is really not very useful if it's more than 8 or 10 people. Right?
Yeah. So the public library where I work, we have those like book club kits like you're talking about. And I think those are usually about 10 to 12 books that people can
Ours is
borrow.
general public too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like 10 to 12 is a nice number for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say 8 to 10, right? 10 to 12, something like that. Because anything more than that, and it's no longer a discussion. Because I've been to public libraries that have a whole room full of people to discuss the book. And it's a presentation, it's not a discussion. You
Right,
can't discuss when you've got a room full of people.
yeah. Once you get beyond 12, 13 people, that it's, I
When-
just did one this week. We had 8 or 9 people and it was really nice, and you could exchange ideas, and it's not overwhelming, and it's yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
I think, 6 is about perfect to give everybody an opportunity to participate. Anyway, that's what I was trying to think of, something that, could Jerry go find money for a project like this that would help all of us? And there may be other projects out there. That's just what came to mind when he asked me way back when he first started.
A couple of years ago, the Yiddish Book Center had was doing grants for, I forget exactly what they call, the title of it was, but for book discussion group on Yiddish writers. Public libraries applied for the grant, and my public library won one of the grants, and there were about, say, 25 people in the first one. They provided all the books. We did not have to buy the books. But the dropout rate was about 50%. So we got down to that, 12 or
Yeah.
so. But if there were maybe somehow find grants that would provide this stuff, I guess it's basically your idea, but from maybe there's a central place, some kind of cultural place that would support that. I don't know. It's probably a pipe dream.
I have no idea what Rachel does. Does she buy the books for her book club members?
I don't know.
I don't think she buys. I talked to Rachel a lot about the book
I
clubs
don't
because
think
I do
I-
book clubs too. I don't think she buys the copies, but what you can do is alert the neighboring libraries that we're doing a book talk, and maybe they can get a few extra copies. And sometimes they could even reserve them. So I think the important thing is to be in touch with your local libraries, let them know what you're doing. And then they can maybe get copies from various branches, put them together near your branch. That to me, I don't remember her ever talking about buying copies of books,
She's never
except, Because
consortium.
some people read a print and some people use Audible. She uses Audible. I use Audible a lot too. So once you get into various formats, it could get very complicated. And not everybody reads print anymore. They have Kindles, so
Right.
Yeah, there's one synagogue book club in my area, and it sounds like everybody's getting their stuff from either from the library or somebody gets a copy and then shares it with some other people when they're done reading it. They're definitely just picking a title and assuming everyone will get hold of it one way or another. But like I'm also in New Jersey where there's like 84 bazillion libraries not far away. Like it's
Yeah.
not hard to get. assuming it's a not unusual book, it's not hard to just
Yeah.
request a copy from
Yeah.
somewhere and have it sent over.
Yeah.
Like in places where things are more spread out, that could be a bigger problem.
Yeah.
Or, our participant from New Hampshire has dropped off, but her public library may not have any Jewish books or not,
Right.
right? So you can say, oh, ask the library to get enough or to reserve them, and that's fine in the LA area or in Houston or in New Jersey, but maybe not in Nashua, New Hampshire, or wherever she was
But
from.
everybody belongs to, I would think, to some kind of consortium today. So you have the power of 50 libraries as opposed to one.
Yeah,
Well,
but the
does
distance
Middle Temple
involved in
Library
places.
belong to a consortium?
I'm sorry.
I see what you're saying. You're saying that
My library, I want a book, my local library doesn't have it. I have, what is it, 85 libraries in Buckles? Something.
I think we're in the 70s at the moment, but yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know. It's a lot of libraries, and there's never a problem. I don't think I've never not gotten a book that I wanted, except when I did a real
I'm
need to
thinking
learn how
this
to
program might be really helpful for people in smaller communities or smaller congregations that don't have that.
Yeah, larger areas, because if everybody's is reading the same book, one library is probably not going to have enough.
Another
Right.
thing is back like 20 years ago or so, banks used to have copies of brand new books that they'd check out like $1 or something. And you could check out, they'd have 200-300 books. My dad used to go and my mom, and they'd read books from the bank. I'd say, you went to the library? No, they came from the bank.
Yeah, they definitely don't do that anymore.
They don't do
No.
that.
I've heard of that.
I haven't seen that in a long time.
And even when it comes to, like, I work for a system that has a very robust budget, and they buy many copies of like the bestseller stuff. But even that we've cut back a bit because we end up, once everybody's read them in the first 6 weeks, with a backlog of things just sitting on the shelf that we end up having to withdraw because we just don't have the space. So it's not the easiest thing to just be like, yes, lots
Yeah.
of books all the
Yeah,
time.
right, exactly. Yeah.
That's this is synagogue and that's a public, but when I worked for the Dallas Public Library, we rented them from McNaughton and then sent back the stuff that they didn't want, that they didn't need anymore. They'd keep 2 or 3 copies and everything else would be sent back. And I know McNaughton still rents
Yeah,
books,
Interesting.
so you might talk to them about using McNaughton.
Libraries used to do that, and they charge, I don't know, $1 or something for the books like the bank did, They get the same kind of books, but they don't do that. At least Orange County Public doesn't do that anymore.
my library doesn't charge for reserves or new books. They used to.
Yeah,
Many
mine
years.
doesn't either. Yeah.
I've never been charged for reserve.
No,
Like
they used to have the
bestseller
overdue fees, but they don't do that anymore.
I'll charge
They don't do
like
that
15
anymore either.
cents a day, I think, at one point.
Yeah, I used to I remember having to pay for reserving books. But like
Yeah.
it was maybe 50 cents and they did do away with it. Like I remember that happening and it was a relief because, that's how I got a lot of my books.
The idea of being friendly, client friendly, and
Yeah, my public library where I work dropped the overdue fees a couple of years ago at this point. And
So I
that's
went to
happening more
library
and more.
school in 1975. And in my administration class, we had to do a project. And I chose my project to be to get rid of overdue fines. And the professor did not like that project. But I said, it's not good customer relations. It takes up too much time and effort. And now in the 21st century, I don't know any libraries that do fines anymore. Everywhere I've ever been, they've just gotten rid of them. And I'm thinking, I suggested this in 1975 and was told no.
You were
You're
ahead of your time. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Very
foresight.
forward thinking, Emily.
There you go. I just think it's really funny.
Yeah.
That was the one class that was the hardest for me, was getting through that administration class.
I think I have to go. I have to run a couple of Secret Santa missions now to get presents.
Well, and we've been on for.
We've been on for over an hour. We did start a
Okay.
little late, Arlene. Don't worry, you didn't miss too much.
Oh, okay. I feel bad because I was
I
rushing.
had issues getting the into the AJL Zoom to begin with. It was a whole
What
thing.
happened?
Okay.
So yeah, but it sounds like this was a worthwhile discussion, and I hope that when we'll do this again in a few months for synagogues, that people will come around. And again, if you have any ideas or requests, training, speakers, whatever it is that we can do, like I hope you'll.
I think the idea of meeting with Jerry is a good idea.
Okay, yeah, right. We'll definitely talk to him about that then.
Barry always has good ideas.
Yeah, he knows fundraising up one side and
Yeah.
down the other. Like he really knows what he's like.
Yeah.
It's really what he does, and he's like good about explaining things.
At the
Yes.
least he'll make us feel better.
Right.
Ah,
All right. Well, everyone, have a great night. Thank you so much for
good seeing
joining.
everyone.
Good to see
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right.
Take care. Bye.
Have a good night.
Night.
Bye.
Stay on.